Hey everyone, my name is Rooster, and welcome back to Mechabellum. In today's video, I've got another match against Math is Might. I happened to face him, I think, 5 times in a row on ladder yesterday, and some of the games were really quite good, so I wanted to feature another one. Now, in this particular one, I think the ending is quite exciting, so do stick around for that. In terms of packs, I mean, some pretty good options here. I mean, I would have loved that Elite Specialist pack, but Math is Might goes for Void Eye Badger, which is actually the pack that I decided to pick in the game I featured yesterday. However, the specialist is a bit different, as he is a fortified specialist here, and I was a cost control yesterday. Now, as for my own pack, I go for a Sabertooth opener with Rhino specialist, very solid spec. Matchup-wise, not the best. Sabers in general aren't that great into Fire Badger or Void Eye, just takes a long time to get through everything, so definitely could be better. And, well, in terms of what I want to play here, I could go for Hound, but again, Hound into Void Eye I don't like as much, so I kind of wanted to try out some Arclights instead, as they have been more popular even in aggressive setups. I decided to push the right side here at the very start. It does have that magnetic barricade that I usually try to avoid, but doing this allows me to perhaps catch my opponent off guard, which does seem to be the case, and I get to use my own magnetic barricade in this instance, which isn't half bad. So, yeah, we can speed things up here. I will likely go for double Arclight. I do try to screen at least, you know, on round 1 here with 1 crawler up front, because I kind of expected him to play more aggressive, and I don't really want his Void Eyes to get insta-locks onto my Sabers. That wouldn't be ideal. So yeah, 1 crawler here, but the other ones are basically on the second wave and the last wave, maybe the 3rd or 4th, depending on whether or not I want to add more behind the tower at some point. So left side here will get stalled. I will get debuffed at some point. It'll just come down to the debuff timers and how good they are. We get the first one. We do head over to the building in the middle. We take it out. And now we start going over to the second tower, which looks to be beneficial as all of the units here get pulled towards the middle, so no second debuff for Math is Might, and yeah, very timely debuff there. The crawlers also arrived to buy some time for my Sabers, and it looks like I'll even be able to get away with a double Saber surviving here on round 1, which definitely would not have happened if I ended up in front of his army, so quite happy about the result, especially as we don't have a ton of hit points to begin with, 4k. Round number 2, we do get unit reinforcements, and both of us just instantly pick up the Wasp here. Ultra solid, and yeah, just hard to pick anything else here. Just threatens, you know, air. There's not a ton of stuff early game that will counter that, unless you want to specifically buy a Mustang, but that's just not something that you generally want to be doing into these types of boards, right? Like, they're not ideal into Arclight. They don't help a ton into Saber, although they're fine, but not amazing into Crawler. And for myself, same thing, right? Not insane into Fire Badger, and yeah, just generally not a unit that I want. So we're both happy to just use it as flank defense and to hope that, you know, our Wasp does a little bit better. Cheeky little beacon here on round 2 from Math is Might. Tries to pull away the crawlers and, well, basically make sure that all of my units follow it so that I don't get the tower debuff. Whether or not it'll work, we'll have to see. I feel like typically this works a bit better if you start the crawler up front and then beacon it to the left. Going towards this tower is uncommon, but it might end up working, although I do have an Arclight here to potentially catch it. Immediate charge shot on the Void Eyes. I did talk about this yesterday, and it is a pretty solid thing to do. You generally won't regret it. It's just so exceptionally cheap as a tech, and he still gets to do everything else. Buy more crawlers in this instance. I level my tower, I buy an Arclight, and I buy a Marksman as well to be able to deal with any air threats. I kind of expected a Phoenix to be picked up, as Math is Might does not run aerial mode on his Void Eyes, so yeah, there wasn't really a threat of that ever becoming a thing. And I also kind of wanted to go into something like Raiden here, since my opponent already has both Badger and Void Eye, and no aerial Void Eye, which means that Raiden is definitely a lot more viable in this instance. And, well, the thing is, if you put something on the field, then it can't be offered in a future unit drop. And, well, I don't really want my opponent to get high-level marksman into my Raidens. Although we did get the unit drop already, so we would have had to wait, but there is some consideration there, at the very least. Here it does look like we will end up winning. My wasps died early, but the marksman manages to catch a couple of remaining wasps, and so there's also, I guess, a good reason to buy it, as it stays a little bit safer as an anti-air unit. So round 1, round 2 go our way, and we've equalized the score already. Very nice to win the early game here, as Fortified Spec is kind of meant to do well in the early to mid game, since after that, typically you have enough damage to kind of not care about the bonus HP. But, you know, on a Rhino Specialist, rounds 1, 2, 3 are not the strongest. I will only get access to, you know, my bonus on round 4. So being able to win these so early is very, very nice. Missile Strike here gets picked up by both of us. We could go Rhino Assault as well. But, you know, there is that Wasp Swarm to hit, and Missile Strike has a bit of a lower cooldown, so I think no matter what you pick here, it's a fine option. More Badgers, more Void Eyes get picked up. That will really kind of solidify my, well, desire for a Raiden. I could buy one immediately here if I want to, so what I could do is sell the Marksman and then buy a Raiden plus a Chaff unit, which wouldn't be all that bad. Of course, I would get rid of my Marksman, and then Marksman could show up in a future unit drop again, but maybe it's worth just getting that tempo going. Alternatively, I could buy something like more Arc Lights or just more Crawlers, try to range my Arc Lights. All of that I think is fine as well. We'll have to see what I decide to go with. My opponent here just kind of by the book, goes range on the Fire Badgers, has the charge shot already on the Void Eye, so the comp is pretty much complete. It does look like I end up going for that Raiden play, and I sell the Marksman, which would have gotten missiled. Now, this does leave me without enough cash to be able to get a mobile beacon. I did expect this missile strike, but yeah, I can't beacon it the way that Mathis Might does, so my Wasps will die, his will live, and we'll have to see how this plays out, because the Wasps definitely could end up killing the Raiden if I lose the ground too heavily, which could happen. I mean, again, Void Eye is pretty good into the Sabers, and the Saber is just not that good at fighting back against them for the most part. One of them already dies. The left side tower here will fall, 7 seconds of debuff. There's a bunch of Crawlers left as well, which is a big problem. I do have an Arclight alive still, but I don't think it'll remain alive for much longer. And when it dies, well, the Raiden will have to get rid of not just the Wasps, but the Crawlers as well. Might be a bit much. Looks actually like I will be able to get there. The Wasp's getting a little bit too close. Do have to get through the Crawlers, but I think 2 Wasps are not going to be enough here. So pretty happy with the round victory, I would say, as I did lose my Wasp to the Missile Strike. And, well, the Raiden gets the farm. Doesn't look like it'll level up, though, which is always nice to have, I feel. Early game, it just means that a lot of stuff ends up not working against them, or they can fight back against things like melting points even, which usually they can struggle with a little bit. I do get the Rhino. So my Power Spike turn, there's an Ion Blast offered that I feel like is just hard to skip. So I was a bit surprised Mathis Might didn't go for it, especially considering, you know, my units are in a line here. They're all clumped up. And I feel like the thing with an early Ion Blast, round 4, is that you're not just picking it for value this round, you're picking it for the value it's going to give you on round 8. So I feel like you don't even need to like maximize its potential on this round 4. Of course, you need to be able to hit something, but you know, I think this would be enough of a reason to pick it, and then you'd be very happy to get it back on round 8. So yeah, bit surprising here. He will have a lot more cash than me, but I can liquidate some of my units, so I sell out of a Sabertooth there. I do decide to keep the Rhino all the way in the back. I'm just gonna go for more Raidens. I also beacon my units here towards the right, because I was kind of expecting the Ion Blast to get picked. And yeah, Raiden, another Arclight. I was gonna say range my Arclights, but I don't quite have the money for that. You will see that I put an Arclight and the Raiden in the middle, because I wasn't expecting an Ion Beam over there. If it got picked, I think it would go right to left and kind of in this area. So this way I get to avoid it. And I also get to fight back on the left, which is where I decided to put my Ion Beam. To be able to catch, you know, all of the units that were going into my tower. Beacon to the right doesn't seem to be too bad, as Melting Point actually does get picked up, and the Sabertooth should be in a good spot to be able to get rid of it, especially with the Wasps right now distracting the Melting Point. And yeah, look at that. Great damage. Raiden level would be amazing, but the experience there goes over to the Sabertooth. Maybe if this can get a level, but it doesn't, as all of the units die before I can get to the tower. So my Raiden here doesn't level, and that's a little bit of a problem. I don't expect this Sabertooth to be able to, you know, replicate its performance this round. So the damage might be a bit of an issue long term against the melting points. If they manage to get a level and I struggle, well, Raiden is not really meant to deal with, you know, big giants. It's more so meant to deal with things like the Fire Badgers and the Void Eyes. So without levels, the damage situation could be a bit of a problem. I've got other stuff to solve though. I kind of need range on my arc lights. We do have unit reinforcements here. I was quite happy that there were no marksmen or things like that. There is Farseer, but there's already a bit of overlap between them and the melting point, so I didn't care too much. I go for the Sandworm in this case. Maybe I should have picked something else like the Phantom Ray, which does sell for more, or even the Farseer. But, I mean, that's what I end up going for. I tried to kind of, pressure the right side as much as possible, hoping that perhaps I could overwhelm the melting point with, you know, the Crawlers, the Wasps, and then a bunch of tanky, relatively high DPS units. I do range my Raiden, and I add another one here to try and really target these packs of Badgers. If I can kill the Chaff Clear, then the late Chaff will be a bit of a problem. Granted, I don't have a ton of Chaff right now, or at least late Chaff, but, you know, that could get picked up at some point, and I really want to try and get those Raidens to level, or at least one or two of them to get past level 1. Left side here will get attacked, although the beacon makes it so that I don't care too much. Raiden does lock on relatively nicely. The Worm will have to see how well it does. Right now it seems like it's just going to be stuck, as my Arclights do have range, but I don't manage to clear the Chaff fast enough for it to re-burrow. My Sabertooth has gone down, fire was used, or at least oil was used and then ignited, which means that I had no Chaff. And it does look like the melting points here will win, and because melting point has such an incredibly low XP threshold, they level instantly, which is very scary, because if I was gonna struggle with level 1 melters, never mind about level 2 melters with potentially nano repair kit or heavy armor equipped. Yeah, I really did foresee some trouble. However, I was surprised that Mathis Might went for mass-produced Wasp. It's a good card, since you don't really feel the difference between level 1 and level 2 Wasp if all you're using them for is Chaff. But when Orbital Bombardment, Nano Repair, and Heavy Armor are offered, and I'm playing Raiden into Melting Point, I feel like you kind of should just pick either of these, because how on earth am I going to kill the Melting Points without buying my own melter? You know, especially Nano Repair, I can EMP, but that doesn't affect the Nano Repair kit. So, yeah, I was a bit surprised about this. The Wasps are going to be annoying, especially with the shield pickup, but now I might not have, like, massive trouble killing the melters. Some trouble still, but not insurmountable with my Raidens. And, yeah, I mean, this round, what I kind of wanted was to solve my Chaff Clear problems, and really make sure that I have enough arc lights to not have to worry about that anymore. I do pick up the Orbital, which actually very timely pickup considering all of the Wasps get stacked, so quite happy about that. And I am going to beacon here towards the left, not only to target this, but also to try and perhaps avoid a spell if Orbital Bombardment was picked up. I do go for Shockwave Arc Lights, as I mentioned. I wanted to kind of solve the Chaff problem because my opponent did start to pick up quite a lot of Crawlers across the field, and doing this just makes sure that I can focus on anything else in the future. I do sell out of one of my Sabertooth since it does have a level, so I think it's worth more experience here than the level 1 Worm. That will be next on the chopping block. And then, well, considering I see the Wasps here, I felt like I kind of just had to buy Mustang, which wouldn't be the worst since Mustang are quite nice into melting point as they double down as Chaff, so I could see that being useful. And I should be able to kill the Badgers, which are like the main threat, I guess, to Mustangs. Still, not an amazing round for me. I do kill all of the small stuff, but the 2 melting points are still going to be able to survive. I'm going to take even more damage here, going down to 2,000 hit points on the dot. Now we're basically even, and I still feel like I'm behind. Round number 7, we do get spells, Dominion Core, bit too late for that. If it shows up on round 3, I think it's worth considering, but this late, not really. And while I did think about Smoke, I I felt like my opponent was going to start shielding now, since they didn't really shield at all when I picked Ion Blast and Orbital Bombardment. I felt like maybe I made them think that I was going to pick another spell, since I've been pretty heavy on the spell picking thus far. And so I felt like skipping here was the best option. It does seem like I was correct in that, as the 2 bubbles here get purchased. More Wasps going to get picked up here for Math's Might. Do remember that they are 100 cost, so at this point, with the shield, they're not that much worse than a Crawler pack in terms of value. In fact, you could say, I guess, they are the exact same, because 12 Wasps, 24 Crawlers, but you do have the double hit points with the energy shield. Not bad at all. I should sell my Worm here. I should buy triple Mustang. Probably want triple level 2 Mustang, which I should be able to afford with the sell. And yeah, see how things go from there. I do already have double defense enhancement, which is quite nice. Since I was thinking about going for Subterranean Blitz at some point. But yeah, Mustangs here are a must. 2 more melting points picked up here. And yeah, DPS is still very much of a concern, but I felt like I had to address other problems first, and then we can maybe try and do something about the melting points after. I felt like I really had to make sure that my chaff here was on point, which it now is. The Wasps kind of forced my hand in terms of having to buy Mustang, which we now have, which also kind of do double down as nice chaff into the melting points, so that's not too bad. And now I have to find something else. I didn't really want to buy a melting point myself, because I felt like there was just too much overlap in terms of DPS and big units, and I felt like maybe being able to just block the Fire Badgers, which as we can see are doing really well, would be better. If I can just stall for a long time, then my Mustangs can do the work, and my Raidens can probably just, you know, chip damage the melting points to where they might end up dying. This round, though, I am going to take a boatload of damage. 4 melting points alive, a Farseer is still living as well, so if you do the tally, that is going to add up to a lot, putting me down to 350 hit points, and another heavy armor shows up. Now, my opponent picks up the barrier, not a bad item at all, very, very solid when you're playing Giants. I'm happy to pick the heavy armor because I wanted to go for triple blue sledgehammer with armor enhancement, which is what I do. So the idea there is that if I can block the Badgers, then some of the Crawlers will get in, the Mustangs will survive longer, and I think that without Nano Repair being picked up or heavy armor on the melting point, I can kill these melting points with the help of the Ion Blast. So yeah, that's what I pick up. Very happy, by the way, that my opponent didn't pick Ion Blast. That would have been a problem. Kind of what I highlighted before, right? When it comes back on round 8, typically on these types of boards, it is just going to be highly valuable. So I have a bit of an advantage. Opponent goes double shield. They do go for counterfire on the Badgers, which makes sense, right? Shockwave will trigger it. The Mustangs will trigger it, so the bonus range will be activated. But at the same time, bonus range might also mean that they lock onto the sledgehammers a bit quicker, which I'd be quite happy about. I guess another thing to mention here is that the sledgehammers are also quite decent chaff into the melting points, right? They're not made to kill these mid-sized units very effectively, at least up until multi-melter gets picked up. So I get a bit of a 2-for-1 on this particular round. Ion Beam nicely lined up. I was quite happy with that. Managed to kill the barriers. You managed to damage those Fire Badgers, take them out, and you can see that, yeah, those sledgehammers are doing a great job so far. One on the left, there's no melting point in sight. And even though some of the sledgehammers do end up dying, the Raidens, especially the 2 that have a level, are able to fight back. And the Mustangs are doing a good job here as well. You can see the damage is racking up. Almost 50k damage dealt on the one. Well over 40k on the other. Left side, same thing, 56,000 damage, and that is very nearly lethal as well. So suddenly both of us are down to a couple hundred hit points, and round 9 will definitely decide who wins. Now, cat's out of the bag, right? I went for sledgehammers. That is something that likely won't work again, so what is my follow-up going to be? Shield airdrop here was a mistake. I didn't really want to pick that up. I just kind of fat-fingered. I wanted the Rhino Assault or even the Missile Strike, but Rhino Assault is what I wanted. I accidentally picked Shield airdrop. Lucky for me, it's not a bad spell whatsoever. It's not an expensive one either, so I just get to use that on my main board. Oil is back. Rhino is going to be in the back of my field. And here, what I wanted is EMP on the Raidens. The interesting thing is, I did expect multi-melter to come out because that is the easiest counter he has available on the board to the sledgehammers, and multi-melters with levels are perfectly capable of taking down lower level giants. At least level 2 Raidens won't be a problem. I expect this, I click EMP, which is correct, but then Mathis Might, who picked up those Farseers earlier, goes for the preemptive photon coating, so counters the EMP at least for, you know, the first 20 seconds of combat. So we'll have to see how that works out. Beacon into my left tower as well. I go for Subterranean Blitz on the crawlers, and we'll have to see if this Rhino gets in, because I did not defend against that adequately. My idea was to put the Rhino back there to defend, but then when I didn't, I just kind of forgot about it, I guess. I do have the Mustang there, which ends up turning, so the Rhino isn't too much of a problem. And how are these multi-melters going to do? Because those are my sledgehammers just dead. Melting point here is locked on, but lucky for me, the photon coating only lasts 20 seconds. So even though the melting point was locked on to at least one of my Raidens, I now managed to take them out, or at least to EMP them. And because melting points are already very slow by nature, the loss of range and the slowdown just means that the Raidens have a massive advantage against them. The right side manages to win, the left side does take out one of my Raidens, but I think with the way that things are lined up here, I will be able to get the debuff, kill the Fire Badgers, prevent myself from getting debuffed as well, and that should just be the game. Exceptionally close one, cool back and forth. Yeah, definitely I was in some trouble there, but I think the nice thing about this game was keeping the head cool and kind of solving one problem at a time. I probably could have gone away with not shockwaving the arc lights. I mean, at that point in the game, there wasn't a ton of chaff, but eventually there was, and I felt like it's just one of those things you gotta get done when you're playing arc lights. You gotta get to shockwave, and once you've got that, you can fix other stuff. We were forced to go for Mustang because of the Wasp play, and then, you know, the Sledgehammer was a nice move. And then a cool kind of back and forth, I guess, with both of us predicting correctly what the other would do. Mathis Might does go for the photon, but it doesn't end up paying off. Now, it's not because what he did was the wrong move. In fact, it was a very good move. And we're just going to go for the same thing here. So Rhino in the back, as he did as well. We can missile this on the right, which I guess is a bit of a gamble, but otherwise I guess you can hit one crawler. If that hits a Mustang, you're very happy. And we can just like use the oil on the left side here. Now, we gotta go for energy diffraction, of course. We gotta make sure that we loan temp speed, temp range. Photon coating, this should be able to hit these two. We just gotta buy one more Farseer to cover these two melting points. I think I am gonna sell this Fire Badger because it's just staring at a Sledgehammer, and honestly, there's not that much chaff over there. If this crawler dies, even if the Mustang dies, you don't need more than one Fire Badger. What this will allow us to do is buy another melting point. We can even cover it with a shield since there's not much DPS on that side. And then we can just level these two melting points. I think what I would do in this instance is try to beacon this in towards the units and into the left tower. Because the thing is, the photon is going to run out after 20 seconds. So really, you want the fight to be over as quick as possible. You want to be in your opponent's face because the melting points are tanky to the point where, you know, they won't get one-shot by the Raidens. And yeah, you really got to get as much done in that time span. Now, what else could we do? We could level, we could throw a missile here and the missile maybe in the back in case we were expecting the Rhino drop. And yeah, just kind of call it a day here and see what happens. Rhino in the back still won't do much, but the distraction, I guess, is worth something. And it does take out at least a crawler pack. Right side, that missile does end up hitting my Mustang. I guess that's my mistake on my end of the board. I definitely should have shielded against that. And yeah, now that we're moving in, you can see that the melting points are locking on to at least the Raidens. Some of them are being EMP'd, but the tankiness won't get EMP'd away. That will still remain. So even though the melting points, you know, lose their range, lose their multi-melter, they can just brute force the Raidens at the end of the game and deal 1600 damage. So it was the correct move, but just, I guess, the wrong beacon in a way. Beaconing towards the right side, where I didn't end up putting any Raidens, meant that I could really utilize my range advantage and slowly but steadily pick off the melting points in the range fight. So yeah, kind of informative, I guess. If you play multi-melter and your opponent tries to EMP you, your best option typically is just going to be to, you know, run into them. Like, get as close as possible and do as much damage before you get EMP'd. And even after that, you just get to benefit from the tankiness and the innate range of the melting point, which isn't horrible. Anyway, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a thumbs up. Let me know down in the comments below what you thought about it. If you want to stay up to date with my latest content, please consider subscribing. If you want to see me play live, check me out on Twitch. With that being said, take care, guys, and see you in the next video. Bye-bye.